Now, there is a lifelong debate as to whether school is a scam or not, like I said earlier, and why some schools of thought believe that the education system is a scam. Most people still strongly believe that schooling, not education now, schooling, is vital to learning and success. However, many young students feel as though the system forces them to take subjects that they're uninterested in. Now, subjects that have no part to play in their future in the long run. I mean, it's a no-brainer that so many students are interested in something, but they study something else. See where the problem lies? Now, everyone has different passions, different goals, and different career paths. And sometimes these passions are not fan to flame in the regular school setting. People are beginning to focus more on learning more complex life skills that are not believed to be taught in the traditional classroom setting. Over the years, it is believed that the only way to educate children is through the regular classroom school setting. This involves taking your children to a school where a teacher speaks in front of a group of students, covering subjects that give you homework, subjects like math, English, and science. It also includes attending school 5 times a week and, having 2 days off for the weekend and graduating from one level is just a very vicious cycle. Now, so I ask again, is school a scam? We'll find out shortly. But for now, let's meet our guests, shall we? I'm so excited because this is a topical issue and so many people have been begging for answers. So I have the honor of introducing the founder of a Center of Education and Development, Albert Sharra, all the way from the United Kingdom. Thank you, Albert, for joining us.
Welcome.
My pleasure. Also, I have joining me on the show today, education enthusiast and journalist Eric Kyama, all the way from Uganda. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thank you, blessings.
My pleasure. And finally, equally as important, but I mean, last but not the least, I have my in-house guest, Fii Stephen Michael. Fii, his name is Fii, is a growing marketing professional in Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us, Fii.
Thank you.
You look dapper, by the way.
Thank you, blessing.
I've missed in-house guests. You see, on this show, I don't get to have a lot of in-house guests. So when I do, I tend to be more biased towards them.
That's fine. That's all right.
All right, it's good to have you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, my guests, for joining me. Thank you, Eric, and thank you to everyone. Now, it's a men's affair, so I am here to balance it. That's why I'm here. Anyway, so let's go into the conversation. Now, we have seen the debate over time as to whether or not school is a scam. We've seen so many people say that, it's a waste of time. It really doesn't add to anybody's lives. So why exactly do people go to school? And, there's a thin line, like I said in my introduction, that there's a thin line between school and education. So I would like for us to first talk about the difference between school and education. Eric, do you want to go first?
Blessings. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be hosted. The difference between school and education. First of all, education you can receive education whether you have been in school or not. Although when it comes to being in school, you receive a different type of education that will help you gain knowledge that you may not have gained outside school. Now, the kind of education you likely to receive outside school is more of general education. I think that besides looking at education as maybe the subjects like mathematics and all that, it's also comprises of things like etiquette, morals, and several other things in there, So I think that is the difference. School gives you the kind of knowledge that is more of technical, that leads you to a career path of, let's say, being a doctor and the like. While education, which you can receive both either at school or outside, can give you that kind of knowledge that takes you to those career paths of doctor and lawyers and all that. And also, outside school itself, it can give you things like etiquette and the likes. On my side, I think that's the difference between the two.
All right, thank you, Eric. Fii, do you agree with that, or do you have a differing opinion?
Yes, sir. I think that what Eric said is really, really correct. And one thing with the whole idea of school and education for me is the fact that school is a part of education, but it's not holistic. It's just a part of it. So within your educational journey, you are going through different schools. So there's a foundational school where you start with things around literacy and numeracy. That's how to read, how to count, how to write, things around that. and then you transform from there into other schools of thought. So you get to learn things around digital literacy for 21st century skills. You get to learn things around technical skills, maybe STEM and things like that. So each of those things are schools on their own. So thinking about school not just as a four-walled classroom, but as topical based issues. So you're learning specific things within a period of time during your period of education. And these days, there are even schools of thought. So people have thought leadership schools where they get to teach things that even concern personal development. They're schools on their own, a part of education, but still long term. So schools can have defined period, but education really never ends. It just continues.
All right. Education really, truly never ends. It continues. I would also like to ask Albert, do you have a differing opinion or do you agree with them?
No, thank you so much for inviting me to this show. So I really agree to the two. And so education is just broad as they put it across. With the schooling, I think the schooling, so I think it comes in two forms. And with the two forms, I think the first form is where it becomes like a formal system, like you want to formalize something so that you can produce something. Like you want to educate people to become mathematicians, so you prepare materials specifically for that. But then there's another informal kind of schooling in which you acquire knowledge, you get schooled by different systems that surround your environment, and they still produce what we also say schooling. However, I think within all the debate around whether school is a scam or education is a scam, I think the focus now goes on formal education, which maybe will be something that we're gonna go in more just shortly. But I agree with the two, and also how these two also operate within our societies.
All right, thank you, Albert. Now let's make this interesting, gentlemen. I mean, the youths need to latch into something. They've heard of different opinions over time, and I would want for us to get as much clarity as we can. So I'd ask you all this same question, and I would like for you to give me your answers, a yes or no answer, and then we'll come back after the break to discuss it. It's still about whether school is a scam or not. So call it a debate, I mean, because at this point, we need to clarify the issue. So let me start with Albert. Do you think that school, and by school, I mean the four walls of, an educational system, not education itself, but school now. Do you think that school is a scam? By that, I mean unnecessary.
Response is not. It's not a scam.
Okay. All right. Eric, do you?
No, it's not a scam.
All right. Fee?
No.
Okay.
No, it's not.
All right. So you all have the same opinions. Well, I am here to challenge those opinions. So we're going to go straight into that. But for now, we'll go on a short break. We want to check out what people are saying on the street about whether or not school is a scam, because, I mean, youths have different opinions about it. So let's check out the Vox Pop and see what they have to say about it.
Question: if school is a scam. Personally, no, I don't think school is a scam. I think the country is the scam. I think the economy is the scam. And I also think the lecturers play a huge role in also scamming students, because what is the essence of going to school when you cannot come out and boast of a decent job to feed yourself and your family? What is the essence of getting a degree when you go to school for a course of 4 years and spend 5, 6, 7 years? Well, that is not a question for me to answer, but for the government itself. Studying in Nigeria, if you studied in Nigeria or you study in Nigeria, the joke about studying here is that going to school, getting a degree, and then coming out and sitting your ass in the house is a joke which so many people are not laughing at currently. Thank you.
School is not a scam because I believe education is vital for your makeup as a human being. The very fact that there's no jobs awaiting most of Africans after school doesn't mean school is not a scam, because all the knowledge you've gained from your days in school can still be applied to anything you want to do in life. If you have a craft, if you have any business you want, is it agriculture, anything you want to do, you could apply knowledge gained in school, provided you are serious in school. School is not a scam.
Well, those were the opinions of youth across Africa, and I still have my guests with me, and I'm going to be starting with Fii. You said that school is not a scam. Yeah. Not my word. You did. Now, I would like for you to tell me why. I mean, if you're faced with a youth, for example, on the street who tells you school is a scam, what would you say to convince that person that school is actually necessary? Because let's face it, someone just said it now, that going to school for years and graduating to come back and sit at home is a joke that people are not laughing at. So how do you make me believe that school is not a scam?
Okay, thank you, Blessings. Now, one thing is we're currently in a real situation worldwide, and that would mean that every single person that has a goal, a vision, these visions that get formed over a period of time, they have somewhere they're going to. If you have somewhere you're going to, the first question you want to ask yourself is, those people that are already there, what are the things that they have? What are the things that helps them? I call them systems of advantage that help them to get to that particular point. And when you try to analyze that for each person, you tend to see some things that are similar between them. One thing that happens most times is something called confirmation bias, where if there's one person that is outside of the norm, that person is amplified. So we have people that maybe were able to achieve some certain levels of success, some certain levels of results without having to go to school. Those kinds of stories, those kinds of results are amplified. But when you look at it generally, and even globally, out of the top CEOs, top business people, top people in government, politics, and the rest, statistically at the moment, about 94% of them actually went through a typical schooling system, having degrees, some of them with even degrees from top institutions in the world, while just 6% of them are those that had some sort of successes without having to go through the typical schooling system. Looking at that data, the difference is very clear. That means you have a higher chance of getting the kind of things you want to get in life, especially for those that are trying to break certain circles, they're trying to break certain limitations that within family, within society, go to heights that are unimaginable. You have a higher chance of getting that if you go through the schooling system. Because within school, the curriculum is just the first thing that you get to get. There's the network of people that you get to meet within a school environment, those that are your classmates that you can always refer to. They'll be the people that would become your first set of business associates, first set of people that will refer you for opportunities. That circle is also one. That's another advantage of being within that school environment.
I mean, but talking about statistics, I'd like to ask, apologies for interrupting, but then does the statistics really matter? Because it's just like talking about morality, for example. There are different religious centers, right? And let's say 96% of the population around the world believe in some sort of divine being, right? They go to their worship centers and come back. But does it mean that that is what keeps them in check? Or does it mean they just have a very good moral compass? I don't know if you get my point. So, I mean, they go to school, they don't go to school. Don't you think maybe it has to do with their intellect or maybe natural abilities to succeed? Or maybe just, I mean, the school could just be a kind of design, let's just go to school, come out and then focus on getting money, So, because a lot of people have that mentality. I'll go to school, get my certificates for my parents, right? Once they have it, then I'll now sit down and think of what I want to use my life to do. I've heard a lot of people say that. So, I mean, don't you think that a lot of people just believe that the school is just part of the system of their lives? To just go to school, come back, and then even while in school, they're thinking of something else they can do because they feel like the school doesn't exactly profit them.
Okay, so the school gives some sort of foundation, and that foundation is important. Now, everybody acts to the level of what he or she knows. Information is vital. You can hardly act above the level of information you have. For those that do not have access to some certain kind of information, their actions would reflect that lack of information. So people that leave school and then go ahead and do something else that, arguably is higher or better than what they learned. Some people do not have to use their certificates at all. But then there are some things that they got to learn within the school environment, maybe not just academic, but things around resilience, things around, just relationships, things around that. There are several things that they get to pick up within that school environment that helps them to succeed even better while they do what they do. Generally, yeah.
Okay, so let's bring in Albert now. I would also like to ask, I mean, based off of this conversation, doesn't it sound a lot like school is just an addendum and not exactly a necessity? If you look at it, I mean, why do people go to schools? I mean, he has given a very salient point. I would also like to know, because if you look at the statistics of people who remain unemployed, it's not because they didn't go to school. It's because sometimes looking at the organizations, especially in Africa, they have very unrealistic demands. And by that, I mean someone who just graduates is expected to have like 4 years of experience in HR, for example. So how does that happen? I mean, they're saying that you go to school, get your certification, and it will be easier to get a job. And then you go to school, and when you come out, you can't get a job because they want you to be experienced. So does it mean that the time you spent going to school should have been the time spent getting experience for the job?
Yeah, so thanks so much. So I think, yeah, you have kicked off the debate nicely. And on that, I think I need to just to be speaking, I think I'll comment like a teacher. So I treat school as a process that grows up the mind. So the process of schooling, whether you spend 12 or 14 years in school, that's the process of building up your own brain and how you think and how you reason, you argue. And so when you're a teacher, when you're creating a curriculum or a module, actually you take your students like step by step. And the reason of taking your students step by step is that you're trying to build up to something. So you have just one main maybe goal, like I want to produce an engineer, like someone who can maybe fix a mobile phone. But then you cannot just tell the person, you cannot take the person up there. You have to take the person from below, saying, okay, this is how the phone works. It starts from here and goes up. What you are doing in that process, that you are trying to program the brain or the mind of that particular person. And it is the same reason why it is encouraged to send our children to early childhood development centers, ECDs. What may be at from 4 years, 5 years, because we know at that particular time their brains are so active and at a stage in which they can grasp the things quickly and then adapt to the school environment and also the process of learning. But then I think the whole problem of saying, like, if we start maybe looking at why do we have schooling, the formal schooling system in place? So if you start tracing the history, you find that at the beginning, the objective was not to create someone who's gonna do something, particularly like I want to create an engineer. That was not the main role. The main role at first was that let's just produce people who can communicate. And then how do they communicate? How can they read symbols? How can we use symbols to communicate? And also, how can we like write, draw symbols, and then you disseminate the message to someone? So that process was like, now where do we start from? And by saying where do we start from, that's why even the whole alphabet came to become a learning process as a starting point in a human education system or schooling system. So we are taking someone through a process from A to Z. But then the whole concept of education has now been put into question, looking at the output and the expected outcome. Like if you go to school based on those interviews that you did on the street with Africans, you see that everyone is focusing on saying, okay, after school, so what? So it's the so what that has put into equation all this debate of saying whether education is a scam or not. So, but now you look at as the colleague in the studio just said, if you look at someone who has gone through a process of schooling and someone who hasn't gone through the same process, you give them an equal environment to reason or to argue or to debate about a particular issue. They'll debate differently. Why? It's because someone's brain has been programmed, has been introduced to particular concepts or ideas, and then you can use those ones to argue. When I'm teaching, I always tell my students to say, if you want to be an expert on education, don't go on the streets and then someone asks you a question and just say, no, I don't agree with this. You have to breathe in, you have to think. But what do we mean by saying you have to breathe in, you have to think? What we're trying to tell you is that you have to think about what you are taught, what you are introduced to say, okay, school goes through a process that is A, B, C, D. So if you want to argue, you have to think about those 4 dots and how do they relate to the particular phenomena that you have been exposed to. So by applying that lesson or that learning process, you start to think differently. You start to seeing things differently compared to someone who has not gone through that process. And then when you start thinking about graduating and not getting a job, I think that is now a bigger problem. And that bigger problem now zooms into our curriculums. So you look at a particular curriculum, say, okay, you have studied, maybe you have done humanities as an arts, you have got a degree in arts. Okay, when you're doing all that program, how is it framed? Like, what was the intention? Produce someone who's gonna do what? And then if you can't do that in that form of a formal system, like being in a working place, that is a formal organization, can you use the same knowledge that you gathered during the process of learning, maybe 4 years, to do something different? But then the problem is that the whole education system, the way it has been structured, and also our society has prepared us to believe that if you go through a 4-year degree program, the end result is that you have to work in an office where you're going to do A, B, C, G, not what you should do with that particular knowledge to produce something. So all forms of education have got the potential of producing new knowledge that can be used to produce something that you can use to maybe for a living. But then because our society expects, or the way the first education level, the way it was framed, it was that you will get educated and then you'll be deployed to work somewhere. And so we're still waiting for that. That is not working. But the school at the moment is able to introduce you to thinking and start arguing. And then if you can argue, if you can ask the questions, you should be able to say, okay, I learned how to make maths. But there's no market for maths. What else can I produce using the same knowledge? So if you're able to do that, it means that it's not only the education that has to prepare you for that. You have to step in and utilize the knowledge that you gained and start thinking outside the box to do something else for you to be able to survive.
Okay, okay, Albert, thank you so much for that. Now, Eric, still talking about whether or not school is a scam, right? And why you think it's not. I would like to base this question off of my intro. There were some points I read, if you remember. One of it was that there are more degrees every year, and then there are more people getting these degrees every year, meaning that the values drop, and then it becomes more expensive. So there are more degrees, but people can't afford it. That's one. And then secondly, the part that says A students work for B students in companies that were founded by C students. And that brings me to, the disparity where people say this person is book smart and this person is street smart. And from what Albert says now, that it's essential that you learn, and Fii also mentioned that school is primarily necessary. It's essential that you learn some things in school, and then you also have to take initiative. So I would really like for us to understand, how necessary it is it to be book smart instead of street smart? Because according to, and I hope you know what I mean by book smart, street smart. When a person is getting all A's in school, they say the person is book smart. But when a person is very innovative, coming up with ideas, business ideas, making money, that person is street smart. And that is the idea that youths across Africa are running with now. So I would like for us to get more clarity. What do you think about this? Eric, are you there? Eric, your device is muted. If you can help us unmute it, please.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's fine.
I heard your question very well.
Okay.
The idea of book smart and street smart, in some cases, it comes as a result of education systems that are not working for African countries. I consider education to be an indicator of growth and development. By that I mean one of the things a country must look at if it's be considered as a developing or developed country, So if education systems were good, if they were able to implement knowledge that students are going to use to apply outside there in the world, an education system that works for a nation, then you will not be discussing book smart and street smart. And then the other thing, blessings, is that sometimes even when that is done, like having the right education system, this usually it can come down to a person's individual capabilities. There are people who are naturally good at something. You'll find, me personally, I've met many people who are both good in school, and they're also really creative, and they can come up, and they're business savvy and all that outside school. So it can, and then you also meet others who are only good in school and then not good on the streets. Besides looking at whether the education system has been able to help both parties or not, I think it can also go down to an individual's abilities. So basically, that's it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Eric. We will talk about abilities when we get back. But for now, we have to go on a quick break. And when we come back, we'll still be taking reactions from social media on this very important discourse. Do stay with us. All right, thank you for staying with us on Fafanua Afrika. We have been talking about school and education and whether or not it is a scam. In today's world, where emphasis is placed on skill, in addition to educational qualification, there is the need to build your skills while getting your degrees. Now, reading a book, writing them out in an exam, and getting good grades at the end doesn't exactly mean you have been educated. And that's why we talk about the difference between schooling and education, especially if you don't integrate what you have read into your life and into your memory for personal development. Little wonder Albert Einstein said, education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. As vain as that sounds, it carries a lot of meaning. Real education, therefore, is what is embedded into one's brain, and anyone who understands true learning knows that it comes from repeated exposure and the use of information and skills. Now, that said, it's time to see some reactions from social media on school being a scam or not. Toyib Adewale Adelodu says, before them use me, I could use my sense. Okay, that's an excerpt from a song, a popular song in Nigeria. School is never a scam. That is why, even though I dropped out 3 times, I kept going because I knew I was the only hope I had. Born in Mushin, in Face Me, I Face You, but we are in Africa. Opportunities are scarce. You have to add a few more things. All right, that's from Toyib. He's saying school is not a scam. Now, Rayson says, we are under colonized education system. They are preparing for workers, not thinkers. That's why everyone in Africa is told to go to school to find a good job later. Who is going to create these jobs? If everyone wants to be employed, trust me, school is a big scam in Africa, okay? Another opposing idea, this person says that we were prepared to be workers and not thinkers, and we should be thinkers. And Mr. Collar said, school system is a scam, and I envisage a future where you don't have to go to school to prove how worthy or how capable you are to perform a task. It's high time human race evolved from conventional system of school and concentrate on proper and true education. But the question is, how do they go about that though? I mean, we're going to talk about that and possible solutions to that, but that's Collar's idea. Now, Yak says, no, school is not a scam. Although the education system in Nigeria is in disarray, education is the major means of emancipation from poverty if one is wise enough to use the knowledge gained. Yeah, in Nigeria and many parts of Africa, the uneducated may hold the reins. Anyways, he's saying that school is not a scam if you know how to use the education you get properly. Black Lion Africa says education is a scam. So we're having a lot of different or differing opinions. I hope my guests are seeing this. Education is a scam. We wasted time in school only for us to be told we need to know someone to get a job. And that happens a lot in Africa. I'd rather invest in business. So I think that the different agitations of people is not just the educational system, but the system in Africa generally. Now, Big Wig Austin says, stop spreading this misleading school is a scam. You're hurting this generation unknowingly. Africa will pay steep price for this misguided statement you all are peddling on social media. In other words, school is not a scam. All right, do we still have more? All right, that's all for now. Well, we've seen it, and I hope my guests too saw it. So many people felt like, school is a scam, and some say it is misleading and misguided. Stop it. All right, so I still have my guest with me, the founder of the Center for Education and Development, Albert Sharra from the United Kingdom. And I have education enthusiast and journalist, Eric Kyama, my apologies, all the way from Uganda, and my in-house guest, Fii Stephen Michael, a growth marketing professional. So we have been talking about this, and it's been pretty, I wouldn't say heated because they all have the same opinion, but I am challenging those opinions. And I mean, of course, you're seeing differing opinions on social media. So we understand these people's agitations, right? And now I would like for us to discuss solutions, because like I said, from the things that we have seen people say and, tweet, it's not exactly the school system that is the problem. It is the system of government. Someone says school itself is not a scam. The system is a scam. The government is a scam. Those people who ask you to go to school and then don't give you jobs, they're the ones scamming you. So I would like to ask, right? First of all, looking at the school setting, is there a way? Don't you think that there should be a way to segment? And this question is for Fee. Don't you think that there should be a way to segment schooling in such a way that if I'm not, I know there's the part where there's science and there's arts, but that shouldn't suffice. If I am not inclined towards any of this thing and I want to be a guitarist, for example, a singer, a musician, I don't think that there's a provision for that in Africa. And there should be, because then people can focus on what they really want to do. Maybe while growing up, they don't necessarily know, but, in their teenage years, growing up, they know what they want to do. So they can just delve into it and focus on that and get a job in that sphere, instead of just learning everything generically and then trying to get a job where you don't even know what's going on.
Okay. Thank you, Blessings, for that. Now, the thing is, at the beginning, most of the times, a lot of people do not know what they want to do. And that's just it. A lot of people actually change what they want to do over a period of time. You find someone that said, as at the time I wanted to enter university, I just knew I was going to be a doctor. That's what I wanted. And then 3 years, 4 years down the line, when you go through life after some time, you find out that you have passion in something else. You have interest in something else. And because of that, you tend to want to explore those interests over a period of time. What I would say is that although the school system gives a very limited amount of education, we are currently in 2023. We're at a time when access to information has become way faster, way cheaper, way easier than ever before. There's a time when for you to access information, the speed of internet is very slow. Currently, we have 5G, 6G still in process, right? Getting access to even some certain websites was not even possible. But at the moment, we have things like MOOC, they're called. There are online courses that are freely available from schools like Harvard, from schools like MIT, that are available on websites like edx.org, that anybody can just go ahead on his or her own and try to learn. So being in school should not limit anybody from actually learning the things that interest him or her. So you can get the school education, you can go through the process, the structured process to give you a degree. You get your degree, but while you're doing that, there's nothing wrong with, in fact, it should be compulsory for anybody in school to go above and beyond to learn even more. That's the way that people can get some of these things that they need to actually become great in what they want to do.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much for that, Fee. Albert, I would like to throw this next question at you. Now, I was having a conversation with one of my bosses and senior colleagues' daughter. My boss's name is Tolulokwe and her daughter's name is Coco. And I was talking to her and I asked her, what do you want to be in future? She's a young, a little girl. And she says, I don't know yet. I haven't decided. Imagine my surprise. We didn't grow up in that kind of setting where you get to choose who you want to become, which is a fault in the African system, because a lot of parents want you to be either a doctor or an engineer, or if you say you want to be a DJ, you are in big trouble. I'm sure you understand what I mean. So I would also like to ask, don't you think that this kind of pressure goes a long way to contribute to the frustration of the youth when they finish school, they graduate, and then they learn, they go to school all their lives just to try to become a doctor for their parents. And then at the end of the day, they're saying that they want to be something else. So that pressure is another contributing factor. What do you think about that, Albert?
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think I really agree to that. And actually, it's a serious problem and it cuts across. I think it starts from even the parents. So you are lucky if you have got parents who want you to become something because they will try maybe to introduce you to it. You also may be unfortunate having parents who just want you to be a doctor and they don't know what it takes and whether you possess those skills or those fundamental skills that you can at least do it. So they will just tell you to say, you'll be a pilot, you'll be a lawyer, you'll be an accountant, without assessing your capabilities. And then they'll be pushing you towards that kind of a direction. At least those people, they have got information. But majority of African students today, they do not know what they want to do. So I was also involved, I think, in a certain interview. I think it was later published by BBC, in which they were going through certain areas, asking high school students, fourth year, ready to write national examinations, but they didn't know what they wanted to do. And even at Center for Education and Development, we ran a bursary for secondary students. And they reach a point in which they are writing national examinations. They don't know what they want to do. And because they don't know what they want to do, it also affects the level of concentration. Because the moment you know that I want to do this, and it demands maybe having A's, it means that because you want it, you also put an extra gear. And then not only that, in some most African countries, is that you might know what you want. You might know what you want. Your parents also might be supporting you, or your guardians supporting you towards that particular goal. And then because our universities have not been growing over the years, then at high school you write the national examinations. Then it is the university that decides which program for you to pursue. So you are just elected, and the university decides. You can put your choices: medicine, or nursing, and maybe accounting. And then you realize that the final list, when it comes out, there's nothing that you wanted, including what maybe your parents wanted. And so that's also another problem, because at the end of it all, you are pursuing, you're spending your 4 or 7 years doing a program that you have never wanted, or you're not even interested in. Then at the end of it all, because it's not what you wanted, the passion or the interest that you might have by the time you are graduating is different. You cannot be innovative. You cannot even start something on your own. That's why we have so many people who just say, okay, I've got this degree, and they sit down. Why? It is not what they wanted. It is maybe the university pushed them towards that particular direction. Other students, they even changed their second year, third year to say, no, based on your performance, you cannot proceed this direction. You have to take this direction. You're graduating with a degree in an area that you're not interested in, or your parents forced you towards a particular direction. At the end of it all, the outcome is not attractive, because it is not what we are trying to groom. So I really have a problem with the whole system in which we drive our students from the beginning to the outcome. Very few people start on a career path and achieve what they wanted, and they've got the passion. And those are the people we see that they, even if the jobs are not well paying, they persevere, they continue, they work and live. But those people who just do a degree say, okay, this degree is supposed to give me a lot of money, and they don't get that kind of money, then you find that they stay 4 or 3 hours in the office and they knock off. So it's a really serious problem that we really need to address. And it has to start with parents. The parents need to identify the skills that their children have. Make sure they put them on a path so that they pursue the careers that also they can complete. Because we have even students that have been weeded out of the university.
Right.
Other students just graduating with passes. Why? it is not within their interests. So we really need to address that thing.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Albert. Eric, I would also like to ask you, factually speaking, do you think that skills can be refined without going to school?
Very true. Skills can be refined without going to school. But I think going to school would add knowledge that would help someone better execute those skills, you know. For instance, if someone has done, we all know that someone can perfect engineering skills without stepping into school. But if they have stepped into school and then also perfect those engineering skills, the way how they think would be different from someone who hasn't stepped into school. They'll be able to execute whatever skills that they have in regards to engineering while also applying the knowledge from school. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, quick one, gentlemen. Let me start with Fee. If you were to prefer a solution to the school system now, what would it be?
All right. So if I'm to prefer a solution to the school system, I would really recommend that there are ways for people there are structured ways for people to learn things that are outside of the courses they're studying. Now, the fact is, especially for Nigeria, a lot of people within the school environment actually got admitted for the course that they did not want. So they got admitted for a course that is different from what they wanted because of maybe grades or several other reasons. So there should be a structured way, structured provision for people, even though they're studying a particular course, to have access to learn things that are outside of that course, beyond the access they have to the internet. So that's like one major thing that I would do, really.
All right, thank you for that. That's a really spot on, observation. All right, I would also like to ask Albert, what would be your own solution to the school system?
Yeah, for me, I would ask for curriculums that produces graduates that can think, graduates that do not expect to be employed and be in white-collar jobs, but people who can think outside the box and have their own ideas of survival. Because now the serious problem is that post-colonization in Africa, the government became public, and then when the structural adjustment program came, privatization really came, and we have had hope that is going to grow big, but that is not working. It's still small, and there's a huge chunk of people who are working within the informal sector. So we do not expect to see more jobs just recently, just within maybe the next 10 or 20 years. No, jobs will remain scarce. So let's produce curriculums or modules that will produce graduates who can think and do things on them.
Okay, thank you. Eric?
I also think what needs to be done is developing our education system so that it works for all of us as Africans, because that would enable us execute whatever knowledge we have gained from school outside there in the world.
All right. Thank you so much. I would also like to say a big thank you to all three of my guests, the gentlemen. I mean, like I said, it was a men's affair today. Now, founder of the Center of Education and Development, Albert Sharra, all the way from United Kingdom. Thank you so much for joining me today. I would also like to say a big thank you to education enthusiast and journalist Eric Kyama from Uganda. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
My pleasure. And of course, my in-house guest, Fii Stephen Michael, growth, marketing, development professional. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you. Blessings.